Slice of Life is friggin' weird. As a celebration of the 100th episode of this series, it's clearly a love letter to the community of dedicated fans that invested so much love and attention to the series, immortalizing much of their fan interpretations into canon. How does it do that? By removing the main six from the happenings of almost the entire episode, passing the baton to the legion of minor and background characters that have been as of yet unexplored in the show itself, many of which have become fan favorites. Of course, while stopping there would have been a fantastic nod in and of itself, DHX goes even further by adopting a bunch of fan-made characteristics for all these characters, canonizing dozens of character traits all in one fell swoop, which is kind of mind-blowing to be honest. The episode starts right off with bringing Derpy back into the fold, it apparently being safe to give her a speaking role again now that the whole last Roundup debacle is far behind us. We then get a surprisingly large amount of screen time dedicated to Dr. Hooves, a couple of scenes from Lyra and Bon Bon, canonizing their friendship, and finally giving us an excuse for the name Sweetie Drops, thank God. Stephen Magnus makes a return and apparently knows Cranky. Octavia and Vinyl are roommates living together in Ponyville, which is kind of weird considering Tavi is mainly seen in Counterlot. There's even what's presumably a friendly changeling right in the end of the episode, though it's a quick throwaway panning shot and all the surrounding ponies are afraid of him, which is sad because that was probably the most interesting aspect of the entire episode for me personally. I mean, forget Cranky Matilda, I want to know more about that guy. This entire episode is crafted as a massive thank you to the community that has kept the show alive by giving the fandom's creativity unquestionable representation in the show itself. If you're a hardcore participant in the fandom and you love the lore the community has given to these characters, this is almost certainly one of your favorite episodes. And yet, in the desire to shoehorn as many fan favorites into the spotlight as possible, we get something of a blender in terms of plot and progression. Sure, there's the loose thread of Cranky and Matilda's wedding that binds it all together, but if you're a stickler for story, so many of these characters and scenarios are introduced with asinine explanations. A lot of these characters are charming enough in the fandom light, but when presented in the canon, it just seems a bit jarring. Ridiculous, even. It's a difficult sensation to really pin down with words accurately. Perhaps it's just due to the ludicrous nature of some of the framing devices rather than the characters themselves. Some of the bits work a lot better than others. The banter with the princesses at the tail end of the episode are great. Derpy has already been seen in the show before, and her character fits well within the world, so she was pretty fine. Agent Sweetie Drops was a bit of a stretch, but I suppose it worked. Sweetie Belle's fourth wall break concerning the runtime was hilarious, and Gummy delivered one of the best lines in the entire show. But then there are just total head scratchers, like why do we bring back the Big Lebowski background characters of all things, and why are they bowling with a doctor? And then actually saying man does kind of break the cardinal rule of this entire show of acknowledging humans. Like, yeah, I know it's supposed to be a joke, and the fanboy in me laughed, but the critic cringed. Why are Octavia and Vinyl sharing a house that is literally divided in half? The show is way more grounded than that, and it doesn't really read like anything in the show's normal MO. And then, what are they doing? What are they riding? And now they're just crashing into everyone? What's even going on here? I suppose it's dumb to complain about this being pandering because, of course it is. That's the entire point. While the fanboy in me is like, oh hey, there's Lyra and Bon Bon together, the critic in me is like, of course they would throw in the stupid Twilight. Or, Lyra and Bon Bon sure seem to be really good friends, don't they? It just feels like instead of crafting a really interesting story that could weave these characters together in a sensible manner, we instead zoom all around town so Larson can throw every fan favorite in front of the camera until all the fanboys are rock hard and frothing. Nothing else mattered. And let's be honest, it was done on purpose. When your focal point of an episode is two donkeys getting married while the main cast is busy fighting the cross between a bee and a panda bear, you're clearly aware of all the ass kissing you're writing and your blatant pandering to the audience. At the end of the day, though, you absolutely have to respect the DHX staff for giving their milestone episode up to the audience. The level of back and forth between the staff and the fandom of this show is kind of unprecedented. As a nod to the most hardcore fans, it's an unmitigated success. But as an example of animated storytelling, it's a complete mess. If this was the first episode of the show someone watched, I don't think they'd be able to make heads or tails of it. Everything moves at a ridiculously fast pace, and nothing is really ever explained or grounded, and it doesn't really feel anything like the show proper. But the goal here wasn't to tell a story, was it? It was to say thank you. So, Slice of Life is an episode that will either appeal or repulse you entirely on how you choose to approach it. Are you a person who is a diehard MLP fan, who loves the fandom characters, has plushies and figures and reads fanfics? This is it. This is the episode you've been waiting for. If you're someone like me, though, and while they can appreciate those aspects, comes to the show to enjoy a good story, you're going to be a bit more torn. While I can appreciate a nice bit of fan service much as the next guy, I can't help but feel this episode really beats you over the head with crowd pleasing, which would be fine, but it's at the expense of literally everything else that usually goes into a strong outing of this show, and that eliminates most of what I enjoy about this series. Without strong writing, characterization, or significant conflict, I just feel like I'm looking at the front page of Equestria Daily, and while that's enjoyable, it's for entirely different reasons that I normally enjoy an episode. Judging slice of life on that scale, though, seems a bit disingenuous because it was clearly never designed to do that, or even to be that. I feel like I'm going back and forth here, so I'm just gonna come out and say it. No, I'm not a huge fan of slice of life. It didn't do much for me. But that being said, I can absolutely understand why people fell in love with this episode, and I don't think anyone is wrong for liking it. It has a bunch of great bits that I can appreciate, and while I wish it congealed to a more cohesive whole, not everyone will care about that. And that's fine. This was for you guys the entire time anyway. Watch it, enjoy it. That's what it's there for. Until next time, I'm Tommy Oliver. Stay curious.